Hey, welcome to another Tap In Tuesdays. It is your girl, Tantalel. I want to say thank you for joining me. I want to say thank you to my new subscribers. Thank you for being a part of my YouTube family. Tap really appreciates it, all right? Well, we're going to get into it. Y'all already know what it is. Y'all know what we came to do. We came to do a couple things. We came to talk just a little bit. We came to teach just a little bit, and then throw in just a little bit of training. All of this to lead us to a place of transformation. That's what it's all about, and it's going to always be about transformation when it comes to Tap Ministries. All right, y'all ready to tap in? I hope you are ready to tap all the way in. Let's get into our topic for today. Man, we gonna be talking about fight for it. Like, what is that? What is fight for it? Like, what is the it, huh? What is the it that we're talking about? You know, when people say things like fight for it, I always want to know, like, what's the it? What are we fighting for? What's really worth getting scruffed up? What is really worth getting pushed around, you know, possibly knocked out? And not saying that you're going with a defeatist mindset, but, you know, in a real good fight, everybody getting licks. Not just one. No, you going to get a lick. The other person's going to get a lick. Yup. People, we going back and forth. There's going to be some scars and some marks from a fight. So what is it that we are fighting for? It's got to be worth something. It really has to be worth it for me to, like, I ain't no fighter, y'all. I'm going to just tell y'all right now. I know sometimes people look at my demeanor. I'm a lover, not a fighter. I'm going to let you know that right now. I'm not a fighter. And so it's really got to be worth it for me. Like, it's got to be some crazy stuff that would cause me to have to, like, pull out the gloves. You know what I'm saying? But one thing that I know for sure, being on this earth for some good time now, I've learned that my future requires me to put up a fight for it. That's what we're going to talk about today. What are we fighting for? We are fighting for our futures. All right? Here's a few things that I've learned. I've learned over the years that it takes faith. It takes faith to fight for something that you cannot see with your naked eye. It takes faith to fight for the invisible. Like, it already is, faith by itself is wild. But when you start to couple a fight with faith, first of all, I can't see what I'm fighting for, but you want me to, you know, exert all this energy to fight for something that I can't really visibly see or tangibly get a hold of. That requires a whole nother mindset. That requires a whole nother way of thinking, a whole nother way of being, and a whole nother way of doing. But we already know it wouldn't be faith if we already had it. Faith is always going to be about the invisible. Faith is always going to be about what we are hoping for. The Bible proves it. You already know it's our final authority, and that's what we're getting ready to go into. I've learned that my future, it requires a now faith. Did you hear that? My future, your future, it requires a now faith that gives you the courage, because you're going to need it. You're going to need it. That gives you the courage needed today to apprehend tomorrow. You have to have courage you got to have courage today in order to access your tomorrow, because that courage gives you a strength. It gives you a stick-to-itness to what's required for the future you've dreamt of, the future you've aspired to living, the future that you've been told you would have. It takes a lot of courage to go after a future that you don't have in your hands and you can't tangibly grab or you haven't apprehended. All right? Over the years, now listen, now I've been here, like I said, I've been here a good while. And so over the years, I've learned that there are these two components. I've had an interesting relationship with the two, but I've learned that they are required. They are two key components of faith, and they are required if we're going to be granted access to the future right here in the present. Yeah, it kind of sounds weird, right? But these are two things that I've learned that I need in order to have access to the future right now. If faith, when you start talking about your future and you bring faith into it, there is something that you have to have, these two things, and that is belief and that is trust. Belief in who? God. Trust in who? God. And so when you hear those words roll off my mouth, you know what? Roll off my tongue. It's like easier said than done. But the reality is it is not as easy as people suppose. It takes a lot to believe. It takes a lot to trust. That is something that is built over time. And so when we start to talk about our belief in God and our trust in God, often people want to talk about it from a religious standpoint and salvation and all of these other things. But the reality is when we're talking about our future and we're putting that in the hands of an invisible God, and then we're believing for something that we can't even see with our naked eye, it challenges the mind. It challenges the cognition and the ability to comprehend what's not right here before us. All right. So this is what we're going to get into. Let's get into this believing. Y'all already know it's the word. It's going to be the word all day, all day, all day, all day. Hebrews 11:6. It says, and without faith it is impossible to please him. For whoever would draw near to God must believe. If you're going to come to him, you got to believe. Now, if you believe how I believe, I really like to shape my world around the context of my belief in God, my faith in God. So a lot of the decisions that I make, they are going to be practical, holistic, and they're going to be decisions that are centered around my faith in God. So if that's you, then the word is going to be talking to you. If not, hey, do what you do. But I've come to find that the final authority and the greatest power is our God and his word. And so that's what I choose to lean on. All right. I choose to lean heavy on that thing. All right. So when we come to God, we have to first believe. We got to believe that he exists. And then we have to believe that he rewards. Some of us have toxic relationships with God. And we believe he exists, but we don't believe he rewards. Why? Because we were introduced to him in a way that showed him as a hard taskmaster, or showed him as a disgruntled father, or showed him as an absentee father, or showed him as one who was just looking for a reason to punish you. And so we have to really do an internal check and say, like, how do I perceive God? When I say I believe God, it's not about believing in, it's not about believing that God exists. It's believing that he is, and not just the existence part, but I believe him enough to know that he rewards. So that means I believe in the integrity of his character. And if in order for me to believe in the integrity of his character, that means relationship has to be established. And in relationship, we have belief and we have trust. All right. 2 Chronicles 20:20. Y'all should be familiar with this. This is believe in the Lord your God, so shall you be established. Belief will cause you to experience an establishing here in the now. And this establishing is really geared towards your future. When you start to connect and to build that relationship with God, you will understand that God, he has your best interest in heart, and he's looking at your future. This is why some of the things you do today, he's like, don't do that. And you're like, ain't nothing wrong with it. This is not messing up nothing that I'm trying to do. But he knows the end from the beginning, and he knows your future, and he knows what he has for you. He already knows. He has the plans. He has the plans and the thoughts that he thinks towards you. They're good. They're not evil. He has a future and a hope for you. So he knows exactly where you're going to be, and he knows the decision that you're making today, it ain't going to work for that future that he planned for you. All right. It's just not going to work for the future. All right. So this is why God, he'll say, listen, when you believe in me, I'm going to establish you. But you have to trust in the way, the integrity, the character of God, and how he is looking to establish you. All right. And so it goes on to say, believe his prophets, and so shall ye prosper. That's a whole nother thing. You got to learn God's voice, so that you can understand when he speaks through man, that it is him talking to you. And often the decisions we make today are going to affect the word. A lot of times that is spoken to us as a prophetic word for our future, and it will affect that. Let's look at Mark 9:23. We're going to get into some good conversation, because I'm just talking right now and I'm teaching all at the same time. All right. It says, Mark 9:23, if you can, this is Jesus' response. He echoed, all things are possible to him that believe. Again, this stuff sounds so smooth and sexy and clean and just easy. I can apprehend this. I can understand this. No, believing for the impossible, believing for a miracle. Like you ain't got no way out. There's no way that you can move forward. Like you believing for a bright future when your present is not dim, it is dark. Your present is horrid, but you're believing for a bright future. And he says, if you believe, all things are possible. All things are going to be possible to you that believe. Belief is like that. What we talk about, that sacrifice of praise. That's what belief is like. Is that sacrifice of praise. People talk about a sacrifice of praise. No, a sacrifice of praise is something that you don't even have the muster. You can't even muster up strength to do it. And so you do everything you can. It pains you. Not in a negative way, but you've been so burdened and you've been so down, and everything you got, it is a sacrifice for you to be able to give. And so God honors that sacrifice. It's the same thing when we're believing, when things are impossible, we're believing from a place. We're believing from a place that talks, it speaks very loud about our relationship with God. You can't just say believe God. You can't just say have faith in God. When you say those things to people who have a depth in God, who have a relationship with God, those words are coming from somewhere. There was a wrestle to get to that place of faith. There was a wrestle to get to that place of belief. Because often as humans, especially the way we are in society today, we know how to make it happen. We got plan B, C, D, E, F, G. Like, all right, God, hey, I ain't trying to bother you. I don't want to hold you up. It looked like you busy, so I'm going to make it happen my own way. We've seen that in the Bible as well. We've seen that happen to our, to one of our fathers, Abraham. We saw what happened, between him and the promise, and then him and a child that, listen, God never told you to do that, but you got impatient. You had that, I kind of believe, but you really didn't believe, because if you believed, you wouldn't do it your own way. All right. So when we believe the Lord, when we fully believe the Lord, it's a process, and it speaks to our relationship with him. Okay. Mark 11:24. I tell you, you can pray for anything. I tell you, you can pray for anything. And if you believe, it's not about how cool you sound. It's not about how you string those words along. It's not about how eloquent you are. It's not about your ability to quote the scripture. The Bible's very clear. It says, I tell you, you can pray for anything. And if you believe that you received it, it will be yours. All right? It will be yours. Why am I talking about this so strong? Before we even get into faith, you have to understand these two components, belief and trust. They're necessary for you to even exercise the muscle of faith. Why? Because when you are being when you're being processed through faith, it's going to take some muscle. When you're being processed to go from this level of faith to another level of faith, it's going to take some trust and belief that you ain't never used before. So it's necessary for you to understand the importance of belief fully in God and trust in his word. All right? I want you to do something for me. I want you to dare to believe while God is still developing you to become. I want you to dare to believe. Now, some people be like, oh, I can do that. Like, I'm confident. I'm confident in who I am. I'm telling you right now. I'm telling you this right now. Things happen in life where your faith, my God, is on trial, and you thought you believed until you questioned your belief. Like the man said in the Bible, he said, yo, I believe, but help my unbelief. A lot of us, we are in that situation. It's like, God, you know I believe because I seen you do it before, and I seen you do it for so-and-so, and I seen you do it for this person and that person, but God have mercy. What I'm in today is a mess, so help my unbelief. What I am in presently, it causes my eyes or my hope to be like really like it's foggy right now. How do I hope for a future when this mess right here that I'm in is just, ew? I need you to help my unbelief. All right. Now let's transition. Let's look at trusting. Let's look at what it says about trusting. The Amplified Bible says, trust in, this is Proverbs 3:5. Trust in and rely confidently on the Lord with all of your heart, and do not rely on your own insight or understanding. When we start to trust in God, this is an intentional thing. This is not something that, is whimsical. No. It is very intentional because it takes all of you. It takes every faculty of your learning. It takes all of what's up in here. Listen, it's a partnership. We got to work, and we've got to literally bend those thoughts the way that we used to think. Nah, you can't think that way if we're going to trust God, because we will try to be practical when a lot of times when God is doing things, it just don't look practical. When he's asking us to take steps and leaps of faith, it's like we have to believe and trust that he's going to be there when we take that step. All right. So it's not the easiest thing, but it is doable. It's doable because the word says so. We're going to trust and rely confidently on the Lord with all of our heart. And we're not going to rely on our own insight and understanding. Why? Because that will get in the way of your faith growing. That will get in the way of you experiencing the levels of glory in God that allow you to see a future that many can't even comprehend today. You'll say to someone, I'm going to be a doctor in the next 6 years, and they looking at you like, you sleeping on my couch. What do you mean? You borrow my car. What do you mean? How are you going to be a doctor? You can't even get in school. How are you going to be a doctor? Because I see with the lens of faith based upon what God has said, and I believe wholeheartedly, completely. I believe his word, and guess what? I'm about to be established, because that's what the word says. Believe the word, I'm going to be established. All right? Trust is something that is built intentionally. Intentionality, it is a major key in establishing an effective relationship with God. So belief and trust, it's important for us to be intentional about us establishing this relationship with God. All right. I've learned a long time ago to be very open with God. I've learned to communicate from a real place, not from some bogus religious place. I communicate very openly with God. Open communication with God, it is the starting point of trusting him. Again, I'm going to say that one more time. Open communication with God, it is the starting point of trusting him. All right. Prayer in its simplest form. Y'all already know this if you took any class I've ever taught. It is communication. It is full on communication. All right? In effective communication, the two parties that are, in dialogue, they learn about one another and determine if the relationship is worth investing. You learn by listening. When someone is speaking, you are actively listening. And then vice versa, then it's your turn. And so then you establish a rapport in the short amount of time that you have with that person in that communication. And so then you begin to establish a trust in that moment to say, okay, I'm going to further this conversation, or I'm going to pause on this conversation. Trust, it is not the easiest thing to do. All right. We all know that trust is not the easiest thing to do. Trust is generally never immediate. It's something that grows over time, but we are often expected to trust God immediately. This is what they this is how they train us. They tell us, it's almost sacrilege for someone to say, I don't trust God. I said it before. I was like, I always have a plan B because like God be doing stuff. Like when I was reading the Bible, sometimes he do what he want to do, how he want to do it. And that kind of bothers me. So I have a plan B because his plan sometimes is a little scary and more times than not. And so people, if people hear that, they're kind of like, what is wrong with you? You ain't got no real relationship with God. No, what's wrong with you? You ain't never been in a relationship with God until you got to a place where you're like, yeah, bro, hold on. We're going to take a pause. We're going to hold on for 1 second because this right here, I don't think I signed up for this. All right. So until you get to those kind of places, you have no idea. All right. You have no idea. But here's what I learned in my relationship with God over the last 30 years of walking with the Lord is that God doesn't even expect us to do that. He doesn't expect us to immediately trust. He does not expect. It's something that happens over time. It's something that happens and is established through our relationship with him. All right? Y'all get this? What I've learned is that spending time with God, it establishes relationship, and that causes us to build trust. Again, spending time with God, it establishes that relationship and it causes us to build trust. We learn to trust God by faith during the process of acting on what God promised while in communication or in prayer with him. This is how we learn this, and we learn it by acting on what he said. You'll never know if you trust God unless you take a step or you take a leap of what? Faith. All right? You have no idea. Prayer has been and is our communication tool that allows us to be known by God, and it allows us to know him. All right? So again, trust, belief and trust, believing in God, believing God, trusting God, it causes us to have access to a faith right now that grants us literally a front row seat to the future. But we have to have those things because we got to believe before we see. Oh man, we got to believe before we see. That's what faith is. And when you graduate to that point, that's when manifestation starts happening. I don't know what everybody else be talking about and what they be dibbling and dabbling in, but what I know is true manifestation from God goes through process. It comes from process. It comes from going through this school called faith. And you have to take the course in believing and trusting. All right? I've realized that in establishing my relationship with God is that he never moves his position of being trustworthy. He never moves his position of being trusting. However, we grow from faith to faith. We are the one that are in a mobile. We are being mobilized and going from faith to faith. And so I've learned that, man, God does not move. But here's what happens. Here's what happened. I want you to think about trust fall. Somebody's right here, and then you going like this. Okay, I want you to fall from here. Boom. He never moves. He never moves. But our faith, what happens to our faith? Our faith, it keeps going up. And so he goes, okay, I'm going to take you up here now. And I still want you to fall and lean and trust in me. So now you want me to fall from this place up here. Then he said, I'm going to take you higher. And then I just want you to trust that faith is the trust fall. Faith is the trust fall of the kingdom. And when you're able to do that, you are now able to access faith that gives you access to your future. And then you start to believe for your future without even seeing it. And how do I know? Because your actions begin to change. Because your character begins to change. Your behaviors begin to change. What you do begins to change. Are y'all hearing me? All right? God, he stays in his position. All right? He stays in his position while we move in an upward motion in faith. And at each level upward, we are required to trust on a much higher and a much deeper level of faith. Each level of faith requires us to trust fall from our place of faith to God's position of trust. I hope y'all getting all of this. Let me hurry up because I already know. We out here. I done already went over time. I'm sure I'm like 2 minutes over right now. All right. The key, this right here, trusting, being able to trust God. This is the key to our future. This is the key that allows us to access our future right now. Why is that even important? Why is that even important? Because our actions right now, what we do today, will determine what our tomorrow looks like. Y'all hear me? What we do today, it will determine what our tomorrow looks like. Okay? So this is why now faith, it is necessary. It is necessary for us to access it today so we can start changing our minds and start changing our behaviors. So the future you is a much leaner, healthier you. So what are we doing today? We going to the gym. We eating the right things. Okay. The future you is a wealth carrier, a courier, and the future you is a wealth person who has wealth that is going to transfer it throughout the kingdom. All right, so that means we're going to change the way we spend. That means we're going to change the way we look at money. That means that we are going to open up our minds to the world of investment in real estate. Where the money at? Like, that's where I need to be. I need to understand it. Why? Because God, he gave you a glimpse of your future. He says, no, you're going to handle much wealth. If that is a reality, we have to take responsibility for the words that we hear. We have to take responsibility for what God says to us in prayer and what he says to us through the prophets. We have to take responsibility. If the word of the Lord is that you're going to be wealthy, then learn how to handle wealth. If the word of the Lord is you're going to be the successful business owner, then go take a class and figure out how to be a successful business owner today so your future can appreciate you. All right. I gotta stop because we are done. We are absolutely done. We went way over. We'll have to do like a part 2 or something like that. But I hope you guys, I really do hope that you enjoyed what we talked about today. We're going to fight for our futures. We are going to adamantly fight for our futures. We're going to make sure that we do the work that is necessary to trust God, to believe God, to trust God, so that we can access the levels of faith that our future requires. All right. So I hope y'all enjoyed this. You already know what to do. Don't forget, do me a favor. Subscribe. Okay. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. All right. God bless y'all. I will see you next